Castlevania is one of those franchises that just seems to be all over the place. Some of its games are widely considered to be some of the best games ever made, so much so that an entire subgenre of games spawned from them. But on the other hand, a lot of the games really are just not the best. Looking at you, Castlevania The Adventure. But as for myself, I have not really played any of these games. I played my first Castlevania when the original collection came out on the Switch, and I can say I like the games to an extent, but they don't pull me in like the games that were inspired by this series, such as Shovel Knight, Hollow Knight. I mean, these games are in my top 10, and they wouldn't exist without Konami making such a beloved franchise, or more specifically, if Koji Igarashi wasn't such an amazing game director. So Koji made the game before Symphony Night as well, Rondo of Blood, in which this game ends with Richter Belmont killing Dracula. So they used that last boss fight as the intro to Symphony of the Night, which is just awesome. I mean, it's got the old HUD from Rondo, it's got that iconic goofy-ass voice acting that's just so beloved, and it's just purely wonderful.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets! But enough talk! Have at you!
If the game did not start this way and we just started with Alucard storming the castle, I don't know if the player would care as much when you come back up to the top of the castle near the end of the game and see that same stairs that Richter climbed 5 years before the event of this game. But Castlevania also has this interconnected storyline across most of its games, so the castle's like in every single game, which means that if you were already a fan of the franchise, you probably would care more about the events of the story, even if the intro wasn't here, but it's just some cool shit, okay? It's cool. So Alucard storms the castle Dracula in hopes of preventing Dracula's resurrection. Normally, this would happen every 100 years according to Castlevania lore. However, something seems to be up and Alucard wants to stop whatever's going on. This is where you first get to play with a pretty beefed up arsenal of tools. Granted, everything is pretty low health here, but it immediately makes you feel pretty badass until you run into Death himself.
Alucard, what is your business here?
I've come to put an end to this.
Still befriending mortals. I'll not ask you to return to our side, but I demand you cease your attack.
And he tries to stop Alucard from preventing the ritual because, I mean, all vampires want to do is just kill humans. But why doesn't Alucard want to kill humans then? We'll get to that later. For now, Death can't stop him, so he just takes all his shit and makes the adventure more difficult for him in hope of slowing him down or making Alucard just give up. So we don't just stop, that would make for a bad game. And this is good game. The game immediately starts to show its classic difficulty here by giving you no weapons, just a basic punch in a room of enemies throwing shit. These stupid skeletons that don't actually die, they just turn into a pile of bones. I mean, the opening is kind of tough. But once you get your hands on the first weapon, which is a short sword that you might just find on the ground, your attack range increases a bit, and then the game just kind of gets easier from here. Yeah, you do take a lot of damage, but it's also pretty easy to avoid things. It's not as hard as like the classic NES style game. You can find a lot of cool shit just laying around the castle, better weapons with different attack ranges. Some stop you in place when you attack, mostly those longer swords that have the high damage output, and some super short range attacks, but also allow you to move when you attack. I personally liked having both a short range on my offhand and then a long range on my main hand. That way I could kind of mix it up when I was exploring. Just made navigation a little bit faster. But really, it's up to you. That's kind of like the beauty of this game. It really did inspire the weapon style of like the Dark Souls games, you know, where you can just kind of get maybe not as strong as a weapon, but it has a really cool unique moveset and whatever. And this game kind of does that, but the movesets are super basic. Like some weapons are just overhands, some are just long range, some are just fine, some are just great. It's kind of up to you to figure it out, and that's kind of the beauty of it. You also find items like shields, better armor, healing items, new cloaks that may offer extra abilities like healing or turning damage into ammo for your special weapons, which is really cool. And it actually changes the color of the cape Alucard is wearing, which is just a nice touch. And you can tell there's a lot of passion behind the design of the rooms. Like there's this one room, it's just a massive staircase, and they actually modeled specific enemies for the room to fight you from a 45-degree angle. Most 2D games would only have horizontal enemy placement, so just seeing them create an enemy type for one room is just that extra attention to detail that you just don't see anymore. Like, look at Hollow Knight, one of the best games ever made. The combat is amazing, the enemy design is amazing. Clearly, it's an incredibly polished metroidvaina, but you don't get these clever room-specific enemies like you do here. You can tell even from the simple things like this that there was just some extreme passion behind the development of this game. Let's talk about the level design itself. This is Dracula's castle, so they had to make it feel like you're actually exploring a castle. A lot of the early games, more specifically like the first one, you do also explore Dracula's castle, but it's very linear. You just kind of go from level to level. Here, it's an open world. It's an entire explorable place. So they have to make everything feel very interconnected. There's hidden paths, secret rooms, but the most important thing here is that it's all cohesive. Every room feels like it actually belongs there. There's a chapel, a library, an alchemy lab, the actual castle keep, a dungeon underground. It doesn't feel random or like you're exploring a world of mixed mashed ideas. It's just one place and it feels right. And my God, the artwork for this game, there's just so much detail in every single room. Some places do look better than others, but I will admit that. But the game does use a lot of really cool tricks to make you feel like you're in this world. Like, they use a lot of parallax backgrounds to add depth. They also use a lot of really cool 3D elements to really enhance the backgrounds, like the lava underground just blew my mind. The clock tower behind the stairs, and oh my God, the beautiful stained glass windows in the chapel. Because there are so many locations in the castle itself, they mixed up the backgrounds and even the foreground elements to make every location feel iconic and keep the back travel from feeling like walking around a maze. This game still adds an on-screen map to help you navigate. Even though it's not the biggest map ever, it's still pretty big, especially for a PS1 game, you know? And the music. Oh my God, the music. Some of the songs don't fit perfectly with the tone of the game or the story, but you know, these songs are just straight bangers, okay? Like, listen to the music in the opening area. My personal favorite music is this really jazzy tone you get in this underground area of the game. It doesn't really fit in with the tone of the world, but it's just the best music in the game. The enemy design is really smart. Some enemies are just the same ones you fought in an earlier room, but colored differently, which is just whatever. But if you wait long enough, you might start to notice that these other colors represent different movesets. You may be used to the basic enemies, but now suddenly there's an overhead attack that you weren't expecting, or they throw something on death. I don't know, it's just cool shit, okay? Like, there's some negatives about all of this, like the Medusa heads are the most annoying enemies ever made in any video game ever. I hate them. They're in every Castlevania, and they shouldn't be, okay? They're just bad. Like, the blue ones hit you, and you fly back. It's annoying, but you can get stun locked. It's a problem that even the first game had. But these gold ones, they turn you into stone. And you know what? I hate it. You get turned into stone, and they're usually placed into these vertical rooms that have too many enemies, and you just get your ass handed to you, and it makes one area so difficult. The stupid clock tower, it's so hard to see what's going on. The gears and everything are just so detailed, but they don't really stand out super well from the background, and you get these Medusa heads flying in from the left and right, and you get these flying guys, and it's just fuck. You can also see a lot of these enemies kind of feel surreal, like floating swords and books that fly out of the wall. I mean, this place is meant to feel magical and bizarre, but okay, let's talk about those books. When they fly off the shelves, it is so cool. It's just this mix of 3D and 2D elements, and it doesn't feel out of place. It actually feels like it belongs in this world. And it's just this awesome 2.5D enemy attacking, flying towards the screen, getting bigger. It's so cool. I don't even know how to talk about this without just saying it's so cool. Of course, not everything's positive. There's like this really important room in the game, the clock tower. And the only way to progress in this area is if the door on the top left opens up for you. I had no idea how to open this door or how to do anything in this room. I had to watch a walkthrough to figure it out, and it turns out that the clock runs in real time. So you have to wait 1 whole minute of real world time for the clock to chime and open the door, and it's just so boring to sit there and wait for the door. You might get lucky and the door will be open by the time you get there, but why? Why do we have to wait? I mean, this is really cool, but it's annoying. Save rooms are really far apart, and sometimes they take these annoying long paths that are just convoluted to get to them because there's only one way to reach them. There's these teleport rooms that make the level navigation a little quicker, but you don't get to pick which one you teleport to. They just go in a circle, so it just adds a little bit of time. It's a little annoying, but not too bad. Plus, they're just a little bit out of the way of the more important rooms, like the clock tower, for instance. Some enemies just stun lock you so hard that you get to lose all your health immediately, and there's nothing you can do. And if you are playing on original hardware, anytime you die, it kicks you back to the main menu, so you better hope that you saved, and save somewhere near where you died, or it's going to be a long-ass walk of shame back to where you were. I did play on an emulator and use save states, but try to keep it as original as I could. I only used them in the save rooms to have a somewhat normal experience. I just wanted to cut out the time that it takes to boot the save from the main menu, because if you die over and over again in the same spot, it takes so long to get back into the game, it's ridiculous. Some other things here. You also have these transforming abilities, like you become a wolf, which I don't think is useful for anything, so I don't know why it's in the game. I do know that Dracula can turn into a wolf in the original book. That's fine, whatever. Why is it in this game? Alucard is not Dracula. He doesn't need to turn into a wolf, okay? And I had to Google this, right? And it turns out that the wolf can swim in the water, and the water hurts Alucard if he's in his normal form. Oh, you also get this bat form, and if you hit the water in the bat form, you also get hurt. But if you're in the wolf form, I guess you just don't. Cool. There's not that much water in this game, and the areas that have water are like just underground. And if you go into the water, there's these enemies that I don't even know if you can hit. I didn't want to try because I don't think there's an attack button when you're in the wolf form. I don't know. It just seems dumb, okay? And as I mentioned, you get this bat ability that allows you to actually fly around. Like, this is the most useful ability in the game, right? Because it's needed to beat the game. You also find these little upgrades for the bat form, like being able to shoot fireballs or use its night vision for the one room that needs it. And finally, there's this mist form that lets you go through some grated walls. Neat. These are all Dracula's abilities, and Alucard is the son of Dracula. So it makes sense for him to have it, but it's just like some of them are a little dumb. But when you talk about the lore, it makes the most sense for these abilities to be here. I don't know, I'm just kind of mixed on them. There's also a couple of smaller abilities, like you get this double jump earlier in the game, you get this super jump when you grab the gravity boots. There's nothing super useful as soon as you find the bat form, but, you know, it's nice to be here. It kind of opens up the areas a little bit for exploration. You're not stuck in a bat form when you're exploring around, that way you can still kind of jump high. It's nice, it's just not needed. There's also the classic special weapons from the franchise, like the throwing axe, the Bible, holy water, these gem things that are completely useless. Do not use the gems. They are stupid. I don't like them. And there's a couple of other pointless ones as well on top of that. But the throwing knives, or the throwing swords, whatever, I've seen people call them both, these are the best weapons in the game. All of the special weapons use your hearts, which in Castlevania, hearts is the ammo count, not your healing items, which is strange and confusing to the outside perspective, but it makes sense once you just play the game. It's your ammo, okay? All of these weapons use a different amount of hearts whenever you use them, but the throwing knife only uses 1 heart for each time you use it, and there's no delay between throws, so you can basically just abuse this during boss fights and cheese your way to an easy kill every time. Plus, you get this cape that gives you more hearts when you take damage, so you have an infinite supply of these things as long as you don't die. Some of the boss fights are also pretty trivial anyways, so, you know, it's fine. Some of them are pretty clever, though, and if you choose to abuse it, you kind of just miss the fun of it. But I don't really remember a lot of these bosses. Like, I only remember them from looking at the footage. There's this one really early on where you fight yourself, which is really cool because he has all of your abilities and he's better than you, but it's not that hard. And there's also these classic bosses in the game. When you get to a certain area, we can talk about that more, but it's a really cool twist. You also get to go to the shop in the game and buy a strategy video on how to fight a boss if you're struggling. Kind of neat, but also odd to see here because it's just like a screen recording built into the game. Oh, and speaking of the shop, you also have to buy the very first key item of the game, which is this jewel that allows you to open these blue magically sealed doors. But every other key item you will find in this game will not be buyable. They are just on the map. So why do I need to buy this damn gem? Okay? Why? It doesn't make sense. I'm exploring the world to find items to progress in the game, and I did not see the gem in the shop the first time. I was too focused on buying a better weapon and better armor. So I was exploring for like an hour, not knowing that the item I needed to progress the damn game was a $500 gem that I could have bought hours ago. The story of the game is also pretty basic. The main plot is to get to the castle and kill Dracula. Once you get the items necessary to get past the broken stairs, aka the platform, you can fight the boss and move on. But if you explore a bit more and discover the side plot, as you're exploring the world, you meet a woman named Maria, who is looking for Richter because he went missing after the events of Rondo of Blood, which was also the fight that you did at the game's intro. Remember when I said that earlier in the video? Pretty cool stuff. It's been 5 years since then, though, and Maria came in search of him. Every now and then, you'll bump into her, and if you're exploring enough, you might find this Roman Colosseum area at the game, which is just the only place that makes no sense. This is a castle, not Italy. We're in England. Don't know why it's here, but this is where the twist of the game happens. You find out that Richter is still here, and he's the one running the castle. So you fly up to the castle at the end of the game, kill Richter, and stop the ritual from ever happening. Alucard leaves the castle behind and says, "I'll never come back here," and the credits roll. The music in the credits is also freaking nuts. But that's it. The end. You know, my overall feelings here are that the game is really fun, and the castle is so well designed. The combat is as basic as it gets, but it feels really good, and that's what matters the most. The upgrades you find for the bat seemed a little goofy, and why weren't you able to upgrade the other two forms? You know, like the mist or the wolf, they just kind of feel useless. Some things felt better designed than others, and the game kind of feels really short with a rather unsatisfying ending, which is why I just don't get why people would call Symphony the best game of the series, but I haven't really played the other ones, so if this is it, it's okay. But that's not it. If you don't go straight into fighting Richter, you can find these two rings, silver and gold. But the gold ring is probably the coolest of the two. There's the side path that leads you to a purple save room. You don't actually save, you enter the nightmare, where Alucard sees his mother hanging on a cross. She pleads for him to kill all the humans, but he knows his mother was a loving person and would never say things like this. By the way, his mother is a human. Alucard is not a standard vampire. He's like this dampire, which is just a mixture of a vampire and a human having a baby. So he's just this little human vampire baby hybrid, and he loves his mother and hates his father. Now you know why he wants to save humans, because suddenly the Succubus comes out of her disguise, who was disguised as his mother, and then the fight was kind of lame. But this was just a really cool story moment. It's just so weird. You just kind of enter this random room and the game just plays with your expectations. Like, this is not a save room. This is the progression of the story. It's just cool. Once you get both of the rings, you can see that in their item descriptions, if you combine them, it says where in Clock Tower. Once you do this, it will make the clock strike 12 times and the floor below you will open. Down here, you find Maria once again, and this time she gives you some dope-ass glasses that if you're wearing during the Richter fight, you'll see this orb floating above his head. If you manage to kill the orb, you find out that Richter is being controlled by this dude named Shaft, which is just hilarious. Once you find out that Shaft is controlling Richter, the clouds above the castle open and a whole-ass second castle is just floating above your head, completely inverted, upside down, and it's just the same castle that you just cleared. Yeah, you heard me. There's a whole second castle, and it's just the upside-down version of the first castle with even harder enemies in it. Now that's just fucking cool. Exploring the inverted castle made me a little queasy because the floor is the ceiling and the ceiling is the floor, and it hurt my brain. I don't care if it's a 2D game, it still made me sick. And you can tell that, like, not every area was perfectly designed with the inverted layout in mind, but they did a really good job at making it feel good to navigate, even upside down. And this is just single-handedly the coolest shit to happen in any video game I have ever played. Now, I understand the love for this game. So, I wrote the first half of the script without knowing about the inverted castle. On a rather casual playthrough, especially for your first one, you may miss a room or two and just not get the silver and gold rings. Like for myself, I just totally missed the Succubus fight because I didn't see that I missed a room. That's on me though, because I just didn't notice. The inverted castle might be one of the coolest twists I've ever experienced, but I honestly think that this is where the game kind of fails to do anything really exciting. All the boss rooms have a brand new boss in them. You need to kill 5 specific bosses to get the 5 pieces of Vlad. But one boss is this rotting corpse with like bees or flies surrounding it, and I thought it was hard at first, then I found one last upgrade for the bat, which gives its night vision moves some damage. Because this move is a cone of damage, it killed all the bees in one hit, and I was able to fly around and just dodge things a lot easier than I would be if I was on my feet. Sure, I did less damage at once, but I could clear the room a lot faster than I could before. Honestly, I don't really remember the rest of the bosses. This is the only one that really stands out to me because it was very strange, but most of them went down far too quickly. And anything that would truly be difficult, I found a way to cheese it on my first attempt. Throwing knives in the holy water do massive amounts of damage in a short amount of time, and they keep you out of harm's reach. Potions just don't cost that much to buy in the shop, and by the time you're at the end of the game, health has skyrocketed so much you can just potion spam and tank hits like crazy. I beat the game in just under 9 hours because it wasn't really that hard. If I played the game back in '97, when I was a baby, in my diapers, probably would not have any complaints with the boss fights. But here, beyond their spectacle making them stand out, I just didn't really feel challenged and kind of forgot about most of them. Now I know what you're thinking. If there's broken items in the game, why not just ignore them? Well, that's because they are in the game. Do you really expect me not to use a game mechanic? I know that these special weapons are a series staple, but if you wanted to keep them in the game, maybe we didn't need a bunch of these max heart upgrades or even these health upgrades. Maybe the game could have used more RPG-like leveling system instead of these predetermined upgrades each time you level up. I don't really know how I would fix this because the game is genuinely really good even with these problems, but I think it just makes for a rather unbalanced experience. Truthfully, I find myself dying to more basic enemies in the game and killing bosses first try over 80% of my playthrough. Castlevania is notorious for the difficulty in its games, but Symphony of the Night just didn't feel difficult. There was this one side boss that felt completely impossible, so I just totally skipped it, not knowing it was even side content anyways, but that's genuinely the only time I had trouble in this game. Even the final boss, the fight with Dracula, was a massive letdown. You quickly defeat Shaft, no problem, then Dracula comes out and transforms into this Bat-Cyberus hybrid that fills the screen. You can get cheaply stun-locked in the corner of the stage, but if you just come into the fight with enough potions, you won't die. This is my first and only attempt at the fight because I just didn't care to do it again. I think I ruined the fight for myself because I did just spam heals the entire time, but really it wasn't that interesting a fight to begin with. The fight with Dracula at the beginning of the game was much more entertaining than it was here. I might have preferred a similar fight here, even the fight with Richter was more fun. I think just having a boss that moves around the stage and requires you to move around the stage more yourself just makes for a more entertaining fight. Where in the actual final boss, you pretty much just stayed stationary and just dodged some pretty basic moves. The inverted castle was their chance to make the game a lot tougher, and they really did try. A lot of the early bosses just become the base enemy types in most of the rooms, but by the time you get there, you just do so much damage, it becomes trivial. Plus, with the castle being the same location, just upside down, I no longer felt like exploring the map because it was just the same location, but more confusing. Again, if this was 1997, my opinion probably would be different because this would have been absolutely mind-blowing at the time. But today, I just don't think the game holds up as well as others might. Now, just to make my point super clear, the beginning of this game, the first half of this game, and the first castle is absolutely wonderful. I enjoyed every minute of it. I only felt exhausted when the inverted castle came around. Maybe they could have mixed it up a bit more by changing some of the paths, making some of the rooms locked, now you have to find a new way to enter the room, but no. Really all they did was change the lava from red to green and change up the enemies in each room. Sure, the fact that the whole world is upside down did make it feel somewhat new and exciting, but the novelty wears off really quickly when you have to explore every inch of the same castle you already explored for a second time. I don't know how I feel, honestly. I'm just kind of mixed. It's a really good game, and it really helped to define the genre, but the second half of the game just doesn't really hold up as well as the first.